All right, one of the most inspirational figures in Australian sport. At 56, Carol is still taking on the world in paracycling racing people half her age. She believes that nothing is impossible, that anyone can overcome adversity and self-doubt to find their inner gold. Carol will have you wanting to tap into your resilience to achieve your biggest dreams, so you too can find your inner gold. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Carol Cooke! Hey!
How many of you have ever had a dream that so consumed you, but you just couldn't quite make it? I think we're having technical difficulties. There we go. You just couldn't quite get there. Well, I had a dream that lasted me an entire lifetime, and that was to represent my country at the highest level of sport. I'm one of the lucky ones. Not only have I represented my country once, but twice, at the London and the Rio Paralympic Games. Thank you. And to come away with 3 gold medals at the age of 55, to me, was nothing short of a miracle. 2 months after Rio, 2 of those miracles were ripped from my possession when they were stolen from my car. And as I waited for the police that day, the media who had started to gather looked at me and said, "Why aren't you stomping around and swearing your head off?" And I said very calmly that I'd found my inner gold, that I didn't need inanimate objects to let me know that I'd found my inner gold and achieved my dream. Now, how did I get to this inner calmness, you might ask? Well, it all started back when I was 9. And the first thing that I realized was that you have to dig deep and you have to know what your inner gold is. At 9, I tried out for an elite gymnastics club. And while my best friend was being offered a position, I was told I was too fat for gymnastics. So with my dream in tatters, I went home in tears. But I have an amazing mum who taught me to think outside the square when she taught me that if I wanted to go to the Olympics, why didn't I just try another sport? I was very lucky that I had parents who made me believe in the power of me and that I could accomplish anything. And so I did try another sport. And my next goal, my ultimate goal, was to go to the 1980 Olympic Games as a swimmer for Canada. Tragedy struck again when Canada boycotted those games. Now, our lives revolve around fear, adversity, and change. Some of it in my life has been fantastic. My move to Australia to marry my husband took in all of those 3 things. Some of it has not been so fantastic. 20 years ago, I had some unusual symptoms, and I had lost my ability to balance. I would sleep for 8 hours and still wake up extremely tired and unable to get out of bed. And then my eyesight started to go. And I'd seen a neurologist for a whole bunch of tests. And a couple weeks later, as I was heading back to see him for the results, I felt like a real fraud because all my symptoms were gone. And as I walked into his office, he was in a hurry. And he ushered me in and sat me in a chair. And he pulled out a big film out of an envelope. It was my MRI. And he held it to the ceiling. And he said, "Oh, you've got multiple sclerosis, too many lesions on your brain for someone your age. So I'd suggest you go home and put your affairs in order before you become incapacitated." I just sat there looking at him. I said one word that day: "What?" "Oh, you heard me. You've got MS, so you're never going to do this silly sports stuff again. And I don't have time for you as a doctor. I've got enough people with MS, so go back to your GP." With that, he put the film back in the envelope, walked to the door, and said, "Hurry up, I've got people waiting." As I stood up and walked towards him, he slammed that envelope into my chest. And as I walked out the door, he said, "See my secretary on the way out." That was the longest hallway in my life that day. As I walked down that hallway to go out the door, I walked straight past the secretary's office and out the door. To this day, 20 years, I don't remember driving home. Now, had I not been born pig-headed and stubborn, that could have very well been the last day of my life. It took me a good year to come to terms with having this disease, but I decided he was right. My life as I knew it was over. He was thinking in a negative way, and I was thinking of it in a positive way. So I'm sure that many of you in this room have also had adversity, trying to find your inner gold, trying to reach those goals. So my next step for you is set specific goals, specific targets with stepping stones along the way. And this starts with a quote that I live by: "Dare to face your fears and believe in yourself, and you can accomplish anything." Sometimes as adults, we're so scared to try new things. We think we're going to look silly, we're going to be stupid at it, we're going to be terrible, and that fear of failure sets in. So how do we get past that fear of failure? You need the experts to help you, mentors and coaches. I certainly haven't reached the pinnacle of sport by doing it on my own. I've put a whole team around me. Those medals are theirs just as much as mine. And then I decided, well, if I'm going to go to the Paralympics as a cyclist, I have to understand what my weaknesses are. So no matter what your goal is, you have to understand your weaknesses and how to work on them, which comes from your mentors and coaches, but then you have to understand your strengths and how to use them. Never forget about those strengths as much as we want to work on our weaknesses. But as you hit those goals, things might not happen the way you want them to, and you need to make changes. If you don't make changes, then if you aren't progressing, then you're not making the right changes. Be bold. Look outside that square. Find those changes that you can make. And when you're trying to get to those last couple of steps at the top, that's when it gets really, really difficult. That's when you have to work on those little 1% things, those things that are going to give you an edge to get there, those things that my mom taught me all those years ago to think outside the square. How am I going to do this differently, and what can I accomplish from doing this? And the very, very last step, which is the most important, is never, ever focus on the negative. Even if you have a failure, it's important to find one little positive out of that failure and build on that with those changes, with those mentors, with those steps that you've put into place. Now, none of my life would have happened the last 20 years if I hadn't been diagnosed with MS. And that was a really bad, fearful change in my life, which actually turned out pretty damn good. And I wouldn't change one iota. I would not go back and say I don't want to be diagnosed with this, because it has made me who I am today and given me a whole other outlook on life. And you know, the doctor was right. My life as I knew it was over, but I'm so glad that it was. Now, you know, it's funny, that calmness and that acceptance of the loss of my medals was rewarded when 3 weeks later, they were found. Mind you, they were found in a duffel bag with a sawn-off shotgun, a bag of meth, and $30,000 in cash, of which I tried to say was mine. And a very, very scary mask. So there are scary people out there. But they were rewarded when they came back to me. So I hope today that I've inspired you to really look deep within your heart to figure out what your own inner goal is. And in the next few days, I'd like you to wake up and before you get out of bed, say to yourself, what would I attempt to do today if I knew I couldn't fail? then go out and try it. Enjoy the challenge. Love the outcome, no matter how good or bad you are at it. And just, you never know. You may find your inner gold. Thank you.
Ah, that is amazing. Carol Cooke, everyone. That was Carol Cooke. Outstanding, Carol. You know, we are absolute honoured to have you as our very first ever TENx talk, Carol. Like, you really, really are a legend in this country, not only from your amazing resilience, but also your willingness and determination to be a winner in every single area of life, which is just awesome. Can we just acknowledge her again? Thank you so much.